Today is February 7th, 2023. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Thomas L. Brown in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
I was born in Aledo, Illinois.
Leda?
Aledo, A-L-E-D-O. Aledo, Illinois,
Aledo, Illinois.
1936.
When's your birthday?
10/6/1936.
10/6/1936. Who was your father?
Claire Brown, Albert Claire,
Okay. And your mother?
Catherine Ann Tomlinson.
Tomlinson. Did you go through school in Aledo?
I went, my freshman year, I went to school in Aledo. And then we moved to Cable, Illinois, and then I went to Sherrard High School
Okay.
there. But yeah, I only spent 1 year in school in Aledo.
Okay. What year did you graduate high school?
Well, I would have graduated in 1956, but I walked out right in the middle of my senior year.
Why?
Superintendent. Yeah, he was kind of an arrogant guy, and I was dating a twin, and her sister and the twins were in study hall, so I was going to pass a note to my high school sweetheart, her sister, and well, when she turned, I noticed it was not Joanne, it was Joyce. Well, Joyce tried to take the note from me, and he walked in and told me to come here, and right away Joyce, she says, that's my fault, I'm the one that did this. He said, no, he's trouble anyway. I said, what's all this about? I walked out there, and he says, and I tried to explain to him, I don't want to hear anything about it, and he says, well, I hope you don't plan on graduating with the class this year. I said, what do you mean? You don't have enough credits. I said, why are you telling me this now? Well, if you're stupid enough, he says, that you don't know what credits you needed, that's not my problem, that's yours. And I just took my books and I dropped them down right on his shoes. He told me to pick them up, and I said, no way. I walked down and went right straight to the principal's office. Don Trotter was an ex-Marine, World War II Marine, and him and I was real close friends. And we talked, and he says, I can see your point, he says, but I wish you all the well. And I walked out, got in my car and drove into Rock Island, Illinois. And I was going to go into the Marine Corps, but the only person standing there was a chief, Navy chief, and he talked me into joining the Navy.
Yeah. Who was your favorite teacher?
Elmer Holtgren.
Elmer
Holtgren.
Holtgren?
Yeah, Holtgren. Hulk, like the hawk, only Hulk.
Yes.
Gren.
Okay. Why was he your favorite?
Well, he was my 8th grade teacher, 7th and 8th grade teacher. We was doing setting up for a run track, and they set the bar up, and I jumped. Well, when I jumped, I lit on some frozen chunk of sawdust and broke my wrist, and it kind of took me out of it. And he brought me a book, and he says, I want you to read this book. I said, and it was Reverend Bob Richards, was a world champion pole vaulter. And he said, read this book. He says, you might get interested in that besides just being a high jumper. So he taught me, and I pole vaulted. I'd go over on the same side I was running around because I had my arm in a cast. I broke the palm out so I could grab all the big old pole we was using back then. And then I got to where I got rid of the cast, and then I had to learn to go the totally opposite. But he followed me all through high school. Every track meet I was in, he was there. And boy, was it yeah, 1955, I won the gold medal. and he was, you'd have thought, you thought he was my father.
Now, what high school did you attend?
Sherrard,
Sherrard. How you spell that?
Sherrard,
Okay. And that's in
Illinois.
Oh, okay.
Right,
I'd
right.
like to ask, when you were in elementary school, did you help with the scrap metal drives and rubber drives during World War II?
Oh, we did. I didn't get involved in too much of that. We were farmers. We worked, and that, and we basically we were just renting farms and working the farms, and my dad and I, and so we did it by horses. But my dad was a firm believer that if you're going to work with horses, you need to do it on your own.
Mhm.
He would not harness my horse for me. I'd take the horse in the barn, get her to stand sideways to the manger, and I'd crawl up in the manger and get the harness on that way, then ride her out in the field and hook up to a harrow and then follow behind him on a disc or plow. And then we'd done everything together like that.
What was the name of your horse?
Topsy.
Topsy.
Hmm.
What other chores did you do in the farm?
Oh gosh, milk. Done a lot of milking and feeding and getting the livestock in and everything. The only thing I didn't work with was gardening, and then after I got into high school, I started hiring out because we moved to a small community off the farm, and I hired out to other farmers. Farm and helping them run tractors and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
What was the name of the town, the community?
Cable, Illinois.
Cable. Okay.
Yeah, and that so it had 3 street lights.
Yes.
Big community.
How many acres could you plow in one day with a horse and walk and plow?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I never did plow. I just done the harrow. Dad done the disking
Okay.
and the plowing, but quite a bit. It's quite a well. We had 180 acres, and I suppose at least 40 of it was with grain, corn and stuff like that, and oats, and haying and that. But then I wanted to follow my dad's footsteps because he was a top saddle bronc rider back in the 20s, and him and Tom Mix were good friends.
Okay.
So that's how my dad's pictures in the Tom Mix Museum here,
Yes.
Oklahoma.
Yes. Okay. So, was your main crop corn?
Yes,
Okay.
that and alfalfa.
Okay. What corn did you raise?
Just it wasn't no hybrid corn.
Okay.
That was they didn't come into hybrid until gosh, it was in the 50s because that's when they started detasseling corn. Every other row was detasseled, and so it would pollinate and become hybrid corn back then. That DeKalb and some of those others, but that was hard work. Oh, that was hard work.
How do you detassel corn?
Well, you have to reach up and pull the tassels out of it, and then so it pollinate from the next row over,
Okay.
and you start out early in the mornings, it'd be dew, and then the sun come out and that steam would come up, then you have all that chaff on you and that pollen, and I had allergies so bad, asthma too, and as a matter of fact, in 1943, 2 or 3, I almost died because of the asthma. I just couldn't. I'd have to sleep with my mom and dad.
Yes.
Gave mom a black eye,
Yeah.
fight
How'd
for
you-
my breath.
Yeah. How'd you harvest the corn?
We cultivated it, and that was set on a cultivator, and you have the handles, and you'd be able to. You come out the end of the row, you pick them up and put them on a hook, the other one up on a hook, and turn your horses around, back them up, start them back down. The other by horses, but with the tractor, you had more freedom you could do 4 and 5 and 6 rows at a time.
Okay. Now, is this just pulling the ears off or what? When you harvest the corn?
Harvest. I miss that. Oh, when you harvest the corn, I would drive the horses, and my dad and other guys, they would pick the corn and toss them up, and on the one side of the wagon, you'd have your freeboard up real high so the corn would bounce right off of that,
Yeah.
and land in there. And sometimes you had to duck because here come your corn flying at you. But I never did. I never did pick corn with a tractor.
Okay.
I never did. I know guys that did, and they also have a miss an arm or whatever. Yeah.
What tractor, what wagon did you have? What brand of wagon, do you recall?
You know, I don't know what kind of wagon it was. It's just an old farm wagon that
Yeah.
we had, and our equipment was real old. Matter of fact, we got the hay rack one time. My dad and I, we put up loose hay, and then it was my job to take a horse and pull the hay up into hay mow, and then they'd trip it, and then I'd bring the horse back and drop the forks down, and it'd grab a hold and send it that way. But we were going down this little incline in the hayfield, and the tongue broke out of the hay rack. Well, Babe and Molly was our horses. It rolled up against them, and Dad grabbed a hold of them real quick and got them stopped. And then he told me, don't move, just stay on top, and I'll try to get the horses down level so this won't run away with you. But he said, if it does, don't jump. Stay with it until it upsets, and then when it upsets, as soon as your feet hit the ground, run. And so he thought about it. He knew that he would get me.
Yeah.
And then I, when I hired out to other people, then I worked on a hay baler, tying wires on a hay baler, and that. And we used to do 8 high and 1 down the middle.
How
Take-
heavy were the bales?
75 to 80 pounds. Now the first one in the mornings were running about 95 to 100 pounds. But yeah, it was around 70, 75 pounds.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
What maintenance did you pull on the wagon to keep it going?
Oh, on the tractors?
On the wagon.
On the wagon? Oh, you had to grease the axles up on them and then pull them off, and that was always, matter of fact, I remember using the old buggy, it's like a jack. The only thing is, it just pivot. You'd push it down and hold it up while the other guy would pull it off and get the grease on it and slide the wheel back on there and put the nut back on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of those old tools we used to use.
So when did you join the Navy?
January 1956.
Where'd you go for boot camp?
Basic training was in Great Lakes.
Great Lakes.
Hmm.
Tell me about boot camp.
Oh, it was tough. Back then you're being drafted regardless, you know. So it is, as soon as you raised your hand, you were theirs, and said the oath. I mean, you were treated royally until you said the oath. And then we got there late at night from Chicago out to the Great Lakes, and first thing they did was they made us get rid of anything that we had in our pockets that they couldn't have with us, put them in boxes, and then they cut our hair off short, everything but shaving our head, and then had us go to shower and go to bed. And they got that morning, they marched us across highway there, across this bridge. I remember that, and to our barracks it was going to have over there, and then it was all drill after drill, and I took my basic training very seriously, and I come down with the measles. I was in the hospital, and back then, if you had so many days you had to qualify, otherwise you'd drop back to the next company going through. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to do that. And this one night, Boatswain Mate Conley was my company commander, and he come in there and he says, Brownie, can you climb rope? I said, yeah, I can climb rope. Well, come with me. take me down to this big drill hall, and there's a bunch of people in there, and they were having what they call athletic night or something going on. And he says, okay, you're challenging this guy standing here, climbing the rope, see if you can beat him. Okay. So they blew the whistle, and I climbed up and hit the ring and came down, and that guy was still going up. Because I just did hand over hand. I never used my legs or my feet. Of course, I weighed 132 pounds too. But I come down, and he got so mad at me. I said, what'd I do? He said, you beat the champion. If you'd have been doing this with us, we've got that honor flag in our company. He says, go get your rifle. Yes, sir. I went and got my rifle, took me to another drill hall, and then had me stand at attention, holding my rifle out like this for a solid hour. And every time I get down like this, he'd hit me across my hands with a leather strap, and he'd go get a cup of coffee and a donut, and my back was just hurting so bad, because they weighed 14 pounds, the old Springfield rifles.
Springfield 03.
Right, and so I made it through that. Then we graduated the following week. My mom and dad came up, and two of my sisters and my grandmother came. And Bozeman Conley come up, and I was talking to Dad, and he says, well, Brownie, I hope you do well. And I looked him right in the face. I says, Conley, if I ever see you on the beach, you're mine. He looked at me like, and my dad said, what's this about? And I said, no, Dad, just drop it. And I know my dad looked at Bozeman Conley and says, boy, for my son to talk to you like that, you must have did something bad. And if he told you that, he meant it. He better not see you on the beach.
Now, what was boot camp like in January in Great Lakes?
Oh,
Weather.
blizzard. Yeah, we walked what they call a grinder watch, which is a slab of cement. We'd walk around the buildings and down through certain areas. And you have to walk with your almost backwards or your head down, because that wind blowing that snow, it burns you. And this one kid run by me, bumped my shoulder, and I spun around and looked. All he had was his skivvies, no T-shirt, nothing. I yelled at him, and I took off after him, and he went across the grinder. Well, I just threw a flying block into him and knocked him off of his feet, and it took 3 guys to get him off of me. That's how that guy was just so out of it. He was just like, he was so strung out, and I don't think it was drugs at all. Boy, I tell you, we fought that, and I finally got away from him, and then this lieutenant got mad at me because I didn't shoot him. And I says, sir, we got him. So he made me write up a big report. About 4 nights later, I was on duty again, and I got this, somebody yelled at me that this guy's going to commit suicide. And ran up there, and I got there, and there's the same kid. He was threatening to jump out the upper story window. And I was talking to him, and what was it? That same lieutenant come in there, asked me, what are you doing? I says, sir, I got this. And he said, what? I said, he's talking about suicide. He said, well, if he wants to commit suicide, let him commit suicide. And I turned, and that kid out the window and broke his neck, killed him. And what was it? They say that was in January '56, and more like towards February. Then I left there. I went to Treasure Island, on Buena Island there in the Bay Area, Harbor Defense Staff personnel. I got a telegram.
What were you? Were you on Treasure Island?
Treasure Island.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got a telegram. to report back to Great Lakes as a witness against that lieutenant for letting that guy commit suicide. I didn't have to go. I tell you, how this lieutenant, I guess they really nailed it to him.
What's your most vivid memory of boot camp?
Vivid memory of boot camp is a kid by the name of Reinhardt. I was standing talking to guys, and and he's from Florida, and I didn't know the guy that well. And we stand there talking, and like I said, I took my basic training very seriously. Of course, I was in top shape. And he walked up and sucker punched me in the stomach and snapped his wrist. And of course, I humped over and I stood up and I looked at him, and the other two guys grabbed him, and I said, "Oh no, he's fine. He didn't hurt me." And he's holding his wrist. He said, and I said, "Uh-oh." So they took him to the dispensary. Of course, he fell because he couldn't say that that he hit me. That's a court-martial offense. Then he had his arm put in the cast. Then they gave him a deal to put over his cast and went and showered. Well, when he came out of the shower, about 4 or 5 of the guys threw a wet military blanket, the old wool blanket, over him and tapped him over a few times with old scrub brushes. And then he had bruises all over, and he had to report that he slipped in the shower. But he never messed with me after that.
So what'd you do in Treasure Island?
Okay, Treasure Island, I was a Harbor Defense staff personnel.
Harbor Defense.
Harbor Defense.
Okay.
And we laid cables, mine cables, throughout the Bay Area and out into the ocean. We go out through the Golden Gate Bridge and underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. And that's when Alcatraz was still active. And that was always nerve-wracking because that current, when you run the Mike boat is a flat-bottom boat that has 2 twin diesel engines in it, and it weighs 10 ton. And it's used basically, you can put troops ashore on it with that, but mainly to haul a tank or a Jeep or something like that to get it up onto the beach and then back it off. And that, so I ran that, and we had a big old reel on the front of it, so we run cable out and that current will catch you, boy, and you fight that constantly, and you got too close to Alcatraz, they'd let you know. They set their big old machine guns, they'd shoot a few rounds, let you know that they mean business, don't get near our area. And then I run a tug, and then a pickup boat, and that, but that was basically it. And then I got orders, special orders, and they told me to see the captain. My captain, I went into his office, knocked on his office, stepped in there, and he says, "Do you have leave?" I says, "Well, I got a few days leave coming." I said, "What's up?" He says, "I've got orders here, and they're special orders, they're top secret, and you'll be taking in some what do we call the SEALs now, on some island during the night." And I forget where it was even at. And he says, "You haven't been in the Navy long enough to go through this." He says, "Your life expectancy will be zilch." And I says, "What?" He says, "No, I'm dead serious." He says, "Now, I'm going to work on this," but he said, "In the meantime, I'm going to have Ed Torres and Valdez work with you, train you hand-to-hand combat." So they did, and it didn't take me long to find out that you better learn fast because they're going to kill you. Simple as that. I mean, when you go skidding across asphalt and concrete, you learn real fast. And because they said if you swamped out and you had to go in with those guys, they're not going to protect you. you're gonna have to fight with your bare hands, or your 45, or trying to grab some weapon or whatever. And they put me through that, and then the captain called me back in. He says, "Well, we're gonna issue you a few extra days. I want you to go home." So I, excuse me. So I went home, seen my parents in Illinois, and I come back, and I walked in our admin office that we had, and the captain had seen me walk by, and he yelled at me and says, "Come in my office." I went in his office, and he says, "I got good news and I got bad news." What do you want to hear first? I says, "Well, what's the good news?" He said, "Well, the good news is I got you out of those orders." I says, "Okay." "Well, what's the bad news?" Is, "Well, I can't keep you here. So you're going to be stationed in Hickenfield, Hawaii. VR-7.
VR-7.
Right. And they was military air transport squadron.
Mhm.
And VR-8 was our maintenance squadron. And so I left there. I rode the Fred C. Ainsworth over. I thought I was going to fly over, but no, they put me
Fred
on
C. Ainsworth.
Fred C. Ainsworth, which is a troop transport. And I thought I was going to fly over there, you know. But no, I rode that, and we hit
Tell me about the trip to Hawaii.
Oh gosh, we went through 3 typhoons between San Francisco and Oahu, you know, Pearl Harbor. And when we pulled into Pearl, we had 11-foot split in our bow, and everybody they had the ambulances there on the pier to pick people up and take them up to Tripler Hospital, because they were so sick. I mean that whole place. And I remember it was late at night. I checked in, and this chief yeoman, personnel man, he looked at my record and says, "Oh, you can type, can't you?" And I says, "Well, barely." I says, "Well, since you don't have a striker's deal going," he says, "we're going to use you as a yeoman." I said, "I'm not going to be no yeoman." Of course, I'm not going to say what I told him. He said, "That or mess cooking." I said, "Well, where's my apron?" Boy, he grabbed me by the arm and took me right straight down the mess hall. And this Air Force is running the mess hall. And this Air Force sergeant, and he says, "This is your home for the next 90 days. Okay. This Air Force sergeant, he looked at me and says, "You're a seaman, what are you doing here?" He says, I told him the story. He says, "I don't like that guy." He says, "I'll tell you what I'll do. How about we make you into a cook striker while you're here?" I said, "Well, okay, what do I got to do?" "You're going to be in charge of the spud locker." I said, "Oh, all I can see is a big pile of potatoes, you know, me peeling potatoes." And he says, No, you're in charge." He took me to and showed me his, on the wall, a list of all the stuff that has to be got out for the next day. He said, "You read that, and this is what you'll have Navy, Air Force, and WAFs working for you. They're doing all the work. You just tell them this is what you got to have and all that, and that's it." I said, "Well, yeah, I can do that." He said, "Now, the hard part is you work 3 days a week, or 3 days, off 2, and work 2 and off 3. I said, that's not too bad, you know. So that's how it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But it was almost getting me in trouble, but I had too much liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry Newton was his name. And I'm trying to think the other guys he was from Alabama. I know, but he cut his hand right across here real bad. No, I think it's this hand here. And I grabbed a hold of it, and then we put a pack on it, and I said, "Let's go." And we started walking, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the dispensary." He said, No, go up here, here's my locker. I went there, and he says, "Open the locker up there." and he had needles and thread and methylate, iodine, all that stuff. He says, okay, I'll hold this here now. I want you to put some methylate and you sew that up. I said, I'm not sewing you up. I can't do that. He said, yeah, you can. And he said, I can handle it. And he says, I said, no. And he said, well, here, hold my hand so I'm not bleeding to death. He said, hold my hand. He poured some methylate on, and he grabbed his needle, his curved needles, and he's sewing that baby up and got it all sewed up and then put some stuff on it. And I said, you still got to go to the dispensary. He said, okay, we'll go. I'm ready to go now. We go to the dispensary, and this officer looked at it. This doctor looked at it. He says, did you sew him up? I says, no, I couldn't sew him up. Well, I said, he did himself. He said, I don't know if I got a guy working for me that can do a better job than he did. He sewed his own hand.
Was he in the mess hall?
Yeah. He was a sergeant. It made me a mess cook. And then after I left out of there, our whole squadron moved back to Moffett Field. And
Where's Moffett Field?
Moffett Field is just out in San Jose,
Okay.
in that area, Bay Area, just south
What
of
did
San
you do
Jose.
when you went on leave in Hawaii? Where'd you go?
Oh gosh, well, I went all over parts of Hawaii. We mainly we go to Waikiki Beach, and that swimming on Waikiki Beach and that, and then of course back then you could drink when you was 19, so naturally I was going to play sailor, so we were down Hotel Street, but it was rough. You didn't dare step off the sidewalk, because if you did, the HASP, which was Hawaiian Armed Service Police, would pick you up. Oh yeah, they made it rough for you.
Why would they pick you up if you stepped off the sidewalk?
If you was in between walking down there and you stepped off the sidewalk and that before you was at a crossing,
Oh,
they would just nope, and that. So, and then
was the Black Cat Cafe still there?
the what now?
The Black Cat Cafe in Hotel Street.
Yes,
Still there?
yes, it was. that, and I'm trying to think of some of the others. I remember Olga. She was one of the ladies that worked there, and we go there and that, and then I remember, oh gosh, this Heinrichs, the kid's name. Him and I was drinking whiskey waterbacks, and we had personnel inspection the next day in White's. And I thought, oh my gosh, I had such a headache. And I thought, oh man, I'm in trouble. And we're standing in formation for our inspection, and this captain, he'd come walking by, and about the time he got to me, he looked down and looked, and the guy in front of me, I'm not kidding you, we had whites on, but in those whites you could see through them, but he had orange, bright orange polka dot underwear on. And that is illegal assault. Oh, he lit on him, and he got by me, and I say, you kid, you saved me. You saved me. And then we had trouble with the locals, and they passed the word we were going to have what they call, I don't know if you ever heard of it before, called Dungaree Liberty. That's where everybody gets a weapon, like baseball bat, 2x4. We was going to walk across the island of Oahu. Every bush, and that we could find a guy in. We were taking them out, and what was happening? The guys would leave the base and walk or ride a bike into town, and they'd go by with a car and open the car door, and a couple of guys got killed, and that's how it was, So
who are these guys in the bushes?
local boys,
Local boys.
right, Hawaiians that didn't like us guys, any serviceman at all. So and see, like I say, there was the Navy and the Air Force. That's what it was, Like I say, we were the flying squadron, and VR-8 was our maintenance squadron.
Mm-hmm.
And but I had a good time. I dated a girl named Nancy that she was a teacher in Los Angeles, but she was getting further in her education at the university there of Hawaii. So I got to go to luau's and stuff like that, and a lot of stuff that I would have never got to go to, you know, and that. And then, like I say, then we moved back to the States. Our whole squadron moved back to Moffett Field.
Now, were you in the mess hall the whole time you were there?
No. I went from there. I went to Special Services, issuing out athletic equipment and sporting equipment, camping equipment, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And and then while I was there, I decided I'd like to get a picture of myself to give to my mother. You know how servicemen do. So I went and I had my picture taken, and I was coming out of the photo place down in the airport base there, and I heard this lady say, "Oh, some mama's really gonna be happy." And I looked up, and it was Debbie Reynolds, Eddie Fisher, Bob Waterfield, and Jane Russell. And Debbie Reynolds come running up and said, "Could I have my picture taken with you?" And I said, "I don't care." And Eddie Fisher took her picture with her standing, and Jane Russell said, "Oh, I want one too." And then Bob Waterfield, which I never liked him anyway. He was a quarterback for the Rams. And he said, "Oh, we ain't got time for this stuff." See, they was on the USO tour, that's what they were. Mm-hmm. But I would love to have a copy of that picture of Debbie Reynolds and I. But, yeah, that was fun. Mm-hmm. Like I say, we moved back to Moffett Field, and I was in 58, and then I was was still in Special Services, and had a great time doing that. We ran track, we played football, and I had the 12th Naval District all sewed up in pole vaulting because of Elmer Holtgren, you know. But then the night before the tournament, I come down in the vaulting box and broke my foot. And the guy that won it couldn't jump 10 feet. And I wouldn't jump till it was up to 12 feet. Then I'd jump because you wear yourself out. And that. And our basketball, we went undefeated. And then we played a lot of schools. And then football, we only had one team beat us. And we played Stanford Junior, college. But we had some college all-stars on our team. And one of the best running backs we had was from University of Iowa, All-American. And he had to eject out of his plane, and he didn't get his feet in the stirrup, and the cowling took both his kneecaps right off. Oh, man, that ruined his career right there. But the only team that beat us was San Quentin Prison. The prisoners. Oh, those old boys. I mean, hit that line and they'd pick you up and dust you off and say, "A little harder next time, son, a little harder."
Were you on the football team?
Not that I was, but I didn't play against San Quentin.
Okay.
But no, yeah, I played football and I ran track and that. And then Johnny Johnson, I always remember he was in basketball. That kid could do so many trick shots with a basketball. And every time you'd see him walk around, he had a basketball in his hand just all the time. And I often wonder whatever happened to him. And our best running back we had was a kid by the name of Calvin Campbell. I often wondered if he was relative to Campbell that ran for the Houston Oilers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I often wondered about that. But that kid, he'd run at you full blast, and you go to tackle, and he'd just slap you on the helmet, spin around, and look at you and wave goodbye and keep on going.
How long you at Moffett Field?
I was there a year. And then I got transferred to the Hamel AD-20, which was destroyer tender.
The Hamel?
Hamel AD-20.
AD-20.
Mm-hmm. And and then Commander Abbott, I spent a lot of time duty with Commander Abbott, and he was getting out of the Navy because he was reserve, and he was a full commander, and he drove this big old black Cadillac. That thing, but a super nice guy, and so I got a ride with him. He said, just I'm going that way. I'll give you a ride. So rode with him, and another guy rode with him to Long Beach, California. And we stopped in Bakersfield, had something to eat, and we come out, and I looked down, I said, Commander, you got a flat tire. Well, the time I got a new one, he says. So he looked up, and there was a Cadillac dealer about a half a block up, and he just drove on that tire right out there, and got out and walked across the street. And pretty soon one of the salesmen come over and says, oh, I was told to help you guys with your sea bags and take you over here. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, he just bought a new car. I said, what? I says, Commander Abbott? He said, don't you know who he is? And I says, yeah, he is one of our pilots, and that. And I says, him and I done duty for over about a year. He said, he's got one of the biggest quarter horse ranches in Texas. He bought the brand new Cadillac right off the showroom, paid cash for it. And he just, he just down to earth guy.
Yeah.
Right. Him and I stand watch together, and he'd go to bed, and he said, well, Brownie, it's all yours.
What division were you on of the Hamel?
I started out on deck division, and then they asked me to run the officers' boat, taking them to Liberty because we'd anchored out. And I made one trip, and I got back up there, and I got a report to the captain's stateroom. I thought, what have I done? Because I thought, gosh, I took my military time very seriously. And so I walked up and I knocked, and he told me to come in, and he says, and so asked me my name. I says, it's Thomas Brown, sir. He says, how would you like to run the gig for me? I said, well, I thought you had a gig, Coxswain. He says, no. I got rid of him. He said, I watched you. We passed you. And he says, your uniform was nice and clean. And he says, right away, you honored a salute right away. And stayed at attention till we got by. And he says, I want you to run the gig. Okay. So I went down and got my dungarees and was working on the deck, and I passed the word, gig of the coxswain, man the gig, or report to captain's stateroom. So oh man, I had pain on me and everything, so I got cleaned up as quick as I could, and I got up there, and he said, what took you so long? I said, sorry, sir, I was in dungarees, I was painting. He said, what do you mean you were painting? I said, boatswain mate had me painting. The first class petty officer down there had me painting. He said, you work for me. You don't do anything other than that boat is yours to take care of and run. And when I need you now. I don't need you tomorrow. Now, do you still want the job? I said, well, yes, sir. He says, he reached over and he hit a button. He says, boatswain mate so-and-so, report to my stateroom. As soon as he came up, he said, you might want to leave. And so I left, and he says, for a few minutes, and then he come out of the boatswain mate, he come out there, and boy, his face is red, and he says, I don't know you. He says, I don't even know you. And so he, I forget, I took him somewhere. But then him and his family, his wife and 2 children, they had a cabin up in Lake Arrowhead in the San Bernardino Mountains. Well, they go up there on weekends. Well, my folks lived in Rialto, California then, because they moved there after I went in the military. And so they'd take me and drop me off at my parents. Then they'd pick me up and bring me back. And then my bow hook, he'd run the gig and he'd have it there for us, and then I'd take over and we'd go back. And that's,
Before you went on the gig, what do you do in the deck division?
well, deck division, we done a lot of scaling and painting. And then what we used to run was what they call a yard and stay, where you got your booms, you know, and you had to learn how to operate it. It's like they say up on two, down on one, because you had your two arms, and that's you bring the cargo aboard and you drop it down these hatches, and that's I run that, and a lot of times I'd run that because the captain wanted me on those controls, and that, and especially when we were getting ready to leave to Ford Island in Hawaii, and on one of our trips on that trip on that tender, and in that, so that's basically what I did. Other than that, the gig was my responsibility.
What was your general quarters on the ship?
On I didn't have anything on the tender.
Okay.
Now my last 4 years on a destroyer, and my general quarters was a forward 5-inch mount.
How long were you on the Hamel?
I was on the Hamel for 1 year,
1 year.
and then 4 years on the tender, or on the Brinkley Bass, DD 887.
I'm sorry, DD
DD 887.
88. And what's the name of it?
Brinkley Bass.
Brickley Bass.
Brinkley Bass, right.
Okay.
And Arthur Pavick was a pointer, and I was a trainer on the forward mount. And I was the down plane rescue swimmer also while I was on there. And then I was in charge, well, one time I was in charge of deck force because I didn't have a boatswain mate on there. And you couldn't make rate back then. I couldn't anyway, because kept getting quoted out. But so I was still in charge, and that, because then I was a hash mark seaman, and I was a prisoner chaser also while I was on there.
Prisoner chaser.
Right. So you go get prisoners, and also you work them also. You
Now,
check
where
them
would you get the prisoners?
from the brig,
From the brig. Okay.
and then take them out and work them, and then march them back to the brig. And had to go through training with that, and shooting the weapons and stuff. Shot mainly the 45, and our 45s, they were so worn out. I mean, within 50 feet, the bullet would be flipping end over end. Then we used pump sawed-off shotguns. But
How often would you have practice at general quarters?
oh gosh, we practiced a lot out at sea. Oh yeah, we practiced a lot. Well, our ship was one of the first ASROC, when they went from Fram overhaul to carry a helo that would pick up a torpedo.
Yeah.
And drop it right over the top of a submarine and drop it right on top of them. We were in a hook, what they call a huck group, hunter-killer group.
Okay.
We had special screws on our ship, and other equipment that I can't discuss, but you know,
And you have helicopters?
it was a drone helicopter.
Okay.
It was radio controlled.
Yeah.
I always remember this pilot coming up. He was a officer. Tailor-made's on like he was something else. He lost it. We never had another one put aboard. He put that in a drink, and we never got another one. And but we had the ASROC missiles on there also.
The what kind of missiles?
ASROC
ASROC.
missiles, right,
Okay.
amidships.
Okay.
I got so mad because I fired it, fried our potatoes. So we had powdered potatoes, the cruise. I love my potatoes.
So when you're on the Brinkley Bass, where'd the ship go?
Well, we went westback, to the Philippines and Japan and, all those areas, over, can't even think, can't even think of the places, Formosa, Vietnam area. And they was constantly drilling where, as a matter of fact, we had a torpedo come at us on the starboard side. The water was rough, and I was walking up the starboard side, and I looked off and I said, what? Because normally a torpedo, you see steam coming through the water. Well, it's on top of the water, bouncing just like a marlin. And I yelled up at the bridge, starboard side, torpedo starboard side, and we went to general quarters right away. And it got about 300 yards from us maybe and stopped, fizzled out. It was one of those Vietnamese. They thought they could try to sink us, torpedo that way, and
Now, were the French still in Vietnam at this time?
no.
Okay.
No.
Oh, that was, Dien Bien Phu, that was 54, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now see, a lot of people don't realize Vietnam. We were in Vietnam in '57, and see, I got out on December the 12th of 1964 after 8 years, and I had 1 year inactive. But it was. We faced a lot, and like I say, I'm fortunate. Like I never stepped on land there at all, but we supported, and they'd ask, they tell us that look, we need a shell here and there, and we could do it. We could send it in there. I talked to a boy here a while back. He said, "Man, when we hear that, the Navy's here." Well, they was thrilled to death.
Yeah.
But
So, did you fire your gun when you were off Vietnam? Were you on your general quarters?
well, we fired our guns, but they were not mostly drills. Now
Okay.
there's one that we fired, but then it all dissipated real fast.
Okay.
But Arthur and I, Pavic and I, 4 years that was our mount.
Okay.
And the only time that they set the timer on the projectile wrong once, and it just cleared the nozzle when it blew, and the red flash right in our face. We had gone around there for about 4 days with salve in our eyes,
Yeah.
blue shrapnel all over the bridge.
Now, who identified the targets for your ship to fire on?
Skipper.
The skipper. So he got his information from the Army on land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But we were drilling constantly. We'd go right straight towards a target, full bore, like those channels coming out, and full bore firing our weapons at the target, and then turn, and that boat would just lean like that. As soon as we hit a certain point where ours would hit the emergency stop, the after 5-inch mount would be firing in that, and then I've seen some. Oh, I tell you, I've been through some typhoons. I had to tie our after buoy watch on the stanchions so we wouldn't lose him at sea. And
What do you do in a typhoon?
write it out. We had to write them out. They wouldn't let us stay in harbor. We always had to go out and write them.
Now, where were you in the typhoon?
I was on the ship, either up on the bridge, or not, a lot of times I'd have watches on the bridge, because even though I became a storekeeper, and that because it was the only rate that was opening up that I could get rate at. But they used to say I was the only boats and mate storekeeper in the 7th Fleet that was in charge of midships Highline Station. And then anytime we bring somebody aboard on the fantail with a helicopter, I was responsible for that also, even as a storekeeper, because I knew how to do it.
That you had a landing place for the helicopter?
Nope, bring them aboard in a harness, get them down on deck and get them out of it. I know the admiral sent his orderly over. He was a lieutenant one time and was at Rough Sea, and we went over, and just about time he was above the screw guard, outboard the line, safety line, he grabbed that harness and was going to come out of it. I just reached over and grabbed a hold of him and threw him down on the deck and popped the harness off at the same time and tore his blouse, and he grabbed me and says, "Come on, we're going right to the XO. You're getting written up, buddy. You don't touch an officer." So we went to the XO. The lieutenant was starting to say something, and he said, "Just a moment, I want to hear what Mr. Brown has to say." And he asked him to step out, and I told him what happened. I said, "Send him in." I sent him in, and boy, he read him up one side, down the other. He says, "If you want that blouse fixed, you tell your admiral to fix it." He said, "He's in charge. I know he's a third-class petty officer, but he's in charge. You do exactly like he tells." He said, "Do you stop to think he saved your life? You were going down into the screw guards, and you'd have been chopped up instantly." And he did come apologize to me for it, though. But yeah, it's just those incidents like that. And then like I said, I was a downplane swimmer. If the plane went in the water, it's my job to get the pilot out of it before it sank.
How many times do you have to do that?
Never real. A lot of drilling.
Okay.
A lot of drilling, and then when I was getting out, they asked me to train other people, and they got to see firsthand what it's like get caught up in a parachute. Parachute's like getting in quicksand, and the lieutenant thought that I was showing them how, but I was treading water and talking to them. They was in the boat watching me, and I was explaining things. I said, "Keep an eye on the parachute," because I said, if it gets you, you're going down with it, unless you know what to do. And that harness that's on the parachute, it gets waterlogged, then it sinks, and it's a lot of weight there. The next thing I know, I'm in it, and I'm going underwater, and some told me just relax, and I reached out, pulled my knife out, and I sliced the parachute and ripped it apart and come up the top. But boy, I was mad. I yelled at that officer, "Brownie, I thought you was demonstrating." Don't you know the difference between demonstrating and the real things happening?
How long are you off the coast of Vietnam?
Probably a month. Actually, about a month. Because we were gone, we were in and out so many different places that I couldn't tell you exactly.
Now, we just had advisors at that time in Vietnam, or did we have troops?
Oh, there was actual troops in there. And right after I got back is when we went in there full bore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I known a lot of guys that was in there that man, they were shocked. I mean, shell shocked and everything else that was going on. Like I say, I'm a very fortunate person that I did not have to do any of those things, but I was trained for it. If I had to do anything, I was trained for it. Like I say, I could actually bring a destroyer alongside pier. I know how to do that. Or run tugs, pickup boats, LCMs, and motor whale boats. Matter of fact, on a motor whale boat, that's when you used to ring the bell. Have to ring the bell for forward, backwards, or all head Bendix type. And we were taking some observers from the Henderson back to the Henderson one day, and the ocean was just like a mirror. I mean, it was beautiful, sun shining, and boy, we would go over there, and I pulled alongside, and I had a bow hook and an engineman and a stern hook, what they called them, 3 guys. And we got those guys off of there and on their ship, back on their ship. And I looked and, where's our ship? What? I didn't want the Henderson to take off, and all of a sudden our ship come up just like that. Oh, I yelled. I didn't even ring the bells. I just told the engineman, all ahead, Bendix, go full bore. And we got there, and we almost couldn't get our boat back up on the ship, because they send the hooks down to hook up, and I got the stern on, but then the captain yelled at me, jump on the net, Brownie, jump on the net to get off. And the guy jumped off. He said, I ain't having nothing to do it. I ran up on the bow and I grabbed it. I said, give me one more time, Captain. He brought the hook down. I got it hooked up there. They got it ashore, and I leaped over on the deck, and boy, that captain, he rode me up one side, down the other. He said, we could have replaced that boat a lot cheaper than replacing you. I said, yeah, but Captain, you know, man. But it was what it was.
Well, where was the ship?
What it was from a tsunami. It came through. When you went from smooth glass water to 20-foot. Oh, and that's the time. And you probably look it up in the records, but we took a 53-degree roll and came back up. You could actually walk on the bulkhead. not even touch it. So.
Now, did you refuel at sea?
Oh, yeah.
How do you refuel at sea?
Well, you start off with, you shoot a line across with a shotgun, 410 shotgun, and then they tie this off. They bring the lines over to set up, bring all your fueling lines over. You hook them up, and then you hook up midships for midships highline station to transfer mail personnel back and forth. Because I was in charge of midships highline station. That's what and I had a crew that was real good. But they would use winches on the other boat. And I know on the carrier, I forget which carrier it was, we were refueling from them, and because the oiler wasn't there, it was in a pretty good sized convoy. And they yelled over, don't you have a boatsmate there? Because we were hand over hand, and something was going on. And so I told my guys, I says, okay guys, just watch my hand. Every time I close my hand, I want you to lay back on the line. Lay back on against that winch. And what I did is I put 2 half inches in a bite on the bag, sent it over to them. And I just kept like that. And when they got there, they couldn't untie it. They had to cut it. I yelled over, don't you have a boatsmate over there? And all of a sudden, Brownie, I looked up the XO, I said, what'd you do? I says, well, they give me a bad time, you know? I says, and he said, well, I understand it, but don't do it again.
You ever go to a captain's mast?
Huh?
You ever go to a captain's mast?
Nope.
Okay.
I had a perfect record.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, in 1959, I was voted the neatest dressed sailor in the 7th Fleet.
Yeah.
They took me into Hawaii to the Honolulu Advertiser. Bob Krause was a reporter and took me on Liberty, and he wrote an article for 2 days about me and how quick-witted I was, and that we had this other kid, Eldon Crow, with us from Minnesota, and he was underage, so he couldn't drink. Well, Bob Krause wanted to get in the nightclub to see how servicemen are treated. I said, well, I think I know how to do this. And I walked up in this big old Samoan standard guard, and I said, hey, does Olga still work here? He looked at me and says, you knew Olga? I said, well, yeah, I knew Olga. Oh, she bought a club in Chicago. That's where she's at now. You knew Olga? Come on in. Who's me? I said, come on in. We were in there, sit down. And we sat down and we had a drink. And I told Bob Krause, I think we better get out of here, because if they check him, they're going to nail me too. So he wrote that in the paper.
Yeah.
How I one place we walked out there back to back, and so I couldn't go back down to Hotel Street until what was it, 3 or 4 years later. This when I was on the Bass, we pulled in there. But
So when did you leave the Navy? When were you discharged?
I left in December of '64.
1964.
Yeah, my family and I, we left naval housing and moved up to Bremerton, Washington, where her folks lived. And I got a job working at Boeing as a laborer, and for 90 days. And then after 90 days, I was able to get opportunity to another trade. So I was able to go into aerospace, and I went from a labor to as high as you go in a paint department, sign of a pen, one day. And my old boss goes, "Oh, I suppose you wouldn't want to come back." And I said, "Why would I want to come back to you?" And his boss says, "How'd you let him go?" I said, "Well, I didn't know he could paint." And he said, "Boy," he said, "we need to talk." So and then Willard Lindsay was a guy I worked with. He was 70-year-old guy. Of course, I was in my 20s and late 20s, but he took me under his wing. He showed me, "Son, you got a ways to go, but I can teach you." And I got to. Matter of fact, one of my projects is hanging in the Smithsonian. The lunar orbiter that we shot to the moon. That was one of my projects. Him and I was the only two painters that could touch that. And I done the scrim cloth on it, and that protected the cameras. And everything we did, it was all X-rayed. And then I remember I had to mix up a color, which I did, for the dead coming back from Vietnam on the planes. It was kind of a lavender color, which I don't know why they wanted that, but so I mixed up the paint to match what they wanted, and then I used to spray paint Minuteman missiles also.
Now, the lavender color was for the
Cots that they were brought on, the bodies were brought on back from Vietnam.
Okay.
Right. And then Minuteman missiles, I sprayed those, and that used to do those, and all the parts that went to them. They were huge. They were huge.
Now, when did you come to Bartlesville?
2013.
Why'd you come here?
Well, our daughter, my stepdaughter, after she retired, she moved to Arizona, and her husband, and they're getting a divorce, and well, Pam, she became a Christian and decided that she needed to learn the Bible, so she picked Wesleyan University. So I told my wife, I said, "Why don't we go down there and we'll move her back here, lock, stock, and barrel." So we drove down from Washington State and moved her here, and then 2.5 years later, I think it was 2.5 years later, she called us and wanted to know if we would like to move in with her, because we're selling our place, and we told our youngest grandson that was in college that once he got out of college, we were selling our place and moving. And so I said, "You need to talk to your mother." And my wife came in and said, "Well, I guess we're moving to Oklahoma." And and then she got sick, and I was her caregiver for 6.5 years, and yeah, she was a special gal.
Yeah.
We had married almost 59 years.
And she said she died, what, a couple of years ago?
2 years ago, November the 18th.
Yeah.
That's her and I there, picture of her and I.
Okay. Would you join the Navy again?
Oh yeah, I would. I would do things a little different, but I was always proud. I was always proud to serve. Like I say, my uniform. I wore my uniform with respect, and of course, that's back. I wore the bell bottoms, the old 13-button bell bottoms.
Yeah.
That was my main uniform. I wore. I still, matter of fact, I still got the last Donald Duck hat.
Yeah.
I was issued the last Donald Duck hat, and because they got rid of them because guys were hitchhiking and getting killed because they all blue, they couldn't see no white hat or anything, and
Yeah.
they getting hit.
I'd like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction.
Okay,
First one is boot camp.
boot camp.
Mhm.
Tough,
Treasure Island.
interesting,
Hickam Field.
very interesting. That place was.
Hotel Street.
Oh, danger,
Moffett Field.
fun.
USS Hamill.
One of the best times of my life.
USS Brinkley Bass.
Brinkley Bass is my home, and my heart was broken when I found out they sunk it out at sea. Why did they do that?
Vietnam.
Bad.
Dwight Eisenhower.
I liked him.
John Kennedy.
I liked him.
Lyndon Johnson.
No,
How do you want to be remembered?
as the guy that cared. I like doing things for people.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. I give a lot to people. But it's excuse me. But it's because I want to.
Well, sir, this is an excellent interview. I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
Well, thank you.
And
Thank you.
again, this is February 7th, 2023. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Thomas Brown in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.